As you, all of you who have been with us lately know that we have gone through the Eightfold Path once, and we are sort of circling back around now to take a little bit closer look and to unfold a little more deeply some of that stuff. And we are going to start that today by looking at the Four Noble Truths. And the first of those is the truth of suffering. The Four Noble Truths are that there is suffering in the world that happens, in this realm, and we know the cause of that suffering, the causes of the suffering, and the causes are what's called the seed, and it's something the Buddha talked about a lot, and that is greed or craving, resistance or pushing away, and delusion. Actually, somebody else gave me some different names, which I really liked. And the first one was pulling things in. And the second was pushing stuff away. And the third was running around in circles. And I think that those fit too. I like them a lot. When we talk about it, people sometimes talk about Buddhism as being nihilistic. Oh, everything is unpleasant and nasty, and that's not so. That does happen. All that stuff is there. We're frequently not aware of it, but it's not as though life is all misery and suffering. This is just how we can separate ourselves from that suffering. We can be free of it, and this is how to do it. And rather than being nihilistic, I find it is like so freeing. Realizing the first time we realize, oh, that's better because I paid attention to it. I looked at it, I knew it. It's a moment of awakening. That's so beautiful. When we talk, if we're going to talk about the Four Noble Truths, I'll start with the first one. And that is that there is suffering. And we talk frequently about the second arrow of suffering in Buddhism. And what that refers to is, like it's as if we've been shot by an arrow. And oh my God, that hurts. And that the leg is in pain. And then the second arrow is what we add onto it. Oh, I hope it wasn't poisoned. Am I going to be able to walk on this? Or am I going to be able to walk at all? Are they going to take off my leg? Is this going to kill me? And all of that stuff that we've added in there that's unnecessary is the suffering that we don't have to live with. That part is optional. There is pain in life. We call it dukkha, but the suffering is optional, and that's where we are starting with our practice. If you noticed when we first began the Eightfold Path, the first part of that was wisdom, and we would expect that wisdom is going to show up later, but the first piece of wisdom that we take in is the truth of the Four Noble Truths. So they basically take on three forms. We group all of it sort of as craving or wanting, but we look at wanting a little bit differently. Wanting is there is something that we feel we have to have in our life. It may be something we have now, maybe some really precious thing, and we think like if we can hang on to this for the rest of our lives, it will be wonderful. If we have to hang on to it, and it's not there's nothing wrong with enjoying something that's pleasant. As a matter of fact, we should do that. But if our life becomes consumed with chasing it and wanting it, then what happens is we're missing the moment right now. We're not living our life. We're just being consumed by that chasing something that we want. And the second uh, way that we're experiencing that is in resisting. And that happens when there's something that's unpleasant. And it's either unpleasant, has been unpleasant in the past, is unpleasant now, or we're afraid it's going to be unpleasant in the future. And we just don't want it. If it's here now, uh, I think, if I could just be rid of this, my life would be perfect. My life would be so much better. I would be happy all the time. And that's just not so. And then the third part of that is delusion. And delusion takes some different forms also. We can be misunderstanding our reality, our experience, and that comes from, I think the major source is the predetermination that we're a victim of also. Because we have been conditioned to see things one way. That takes over all the time, and we're not aware of it. It's there, but it's just has become a habit. And the second way is, if we're just not paying attention, if we're not paying attention to this moment, we're not paying attention to what arises, then we're delusional. It's as though that stuff doesn't happen. An example of that is if we were, let's say we were in some kind of a situation, we walk into a social situation of some kind, and there are people there. And if we are in that first craving or pulling things in, we like that. We're having a good time. We don't want it to end. They're serving really good food and alcohol. I'm having a good time. I don't want this to end. I'll be happy if the party continues forever. Or it may be if we're in that second kind of phase of resistance, we walk into there and, oh my goodness, there are all of these people here and it feels crowded. And I really don't like that person over there. And I don't want to try the food. It's probably been out for a long time, and and on and on and on. And the story is just negative. And then if we're in that third phase and we walk into the room and we're just disconnected and, what am I doing here? And we're not really connecting with anyone or anything. We kind of feel like, we're just watching the party. We're not at all part of it. We don't want to connect with anyone. We don't want to try the food. There's just nothing that feels right. We're just kind of running around in circles. We're spinning around, and we don't know what the point of our being there is. Now, all three of those types sort of persist with us individually. They're not always there, but I think we find that we sort of tend to live more in one or two of those than in all of them. Although they're all there, they're all part of the way that we live and the way we exist in this. But we have a tendency to, like for me, I tend to be resistant and delusional. If I walk into a situation, like the first thing I'm looking at is what don't I like here, and maybe I space out a little bit. It's not that I never walk in there and have a good time, but sometimes that's how things are working for me. And if I just walk in and I'm not being aware, I'm not being mindful of what I'm doing, then that's probably where I'm going to fall into, that resistant, delusional space. And talking about mindfulness, this, as we talked before about mindfulness, that wasn't too long ago. If you remember, we talked about how mindfulness is where we go to work on our cravings, our resistance, and our delusion by seeing them more closely. And again, that's what we're doing. We're trying to see more closely where we are and to be mindful. That's where we can make some changes here, not in what we're experiencing, but how we relate to it. And it's our relationship to all of this that's important. If we're occasionally, if we're happy, that's great. If we're not happy with something, that's okay too. And if we just want to space out, that's okay too. But it's when it becomes a habit of mind and we automatically live from that rather than being mindful of what we're doing, that it becomes not a great place to live from. The close, I don't want to say allies, the characteristics of existence are like closely allied to that. Dukkha is suffering. And it's sort of a broader picture of the whole thing. And then we have anicca, which is impermanence. And anatta, which is not self. And all three of those are closely allied with the three poisons, which is how we term craving, resistance, and delusion. The way those ally with it is, for example, not self. When we are in these states and let's say that we're in that resistant state and we sort of become aware of that, but we begin to take it in as ourself. When it's intellectually, we might know that that's not us, but when we sort of act from that and act as though that is ourself, and that's what we do. Those states of mind, they're automatic. And even though we know better, we know that we're not going to be happy all the time and that craving it and chasing it is not going to do us any good, we still tend to do it. And, we still tend to go with that not self. That's, for me, that's a big one, like seeing that those thoughts, that our thoughts are not us. I mean, again, we know that that's true, but on a day-to-day basis, it's difficult, I think, to see that our thoughts are not us, because so much of our life is taken up with the thinking part, the thinking mind. Another reason that I really like the body scan is that can take us out of there. That's something where we're really in awareness. We're just being aware of what's rising there in the body. That's a good place to see mindfulness and to make that the habit as much as possible.